Well, we are all dealing with our own crises at home, and frontline workers are out there fighting the fight for us with the COVID crisis. We can't ignore the politics that's happening behind the scenes, because if there's anything that politicians know how to do, it's to make sure to use a crisis to distract away from what they're already doing in back rooms. And of course, I'm talking about the Democratic National Committee. They are great at distracting, putting on theatrical productions, and making you feel like there's democracy when really they're in the back room making their own decisions. And I have been obviously obsessed with the DNC's structure for a long time, and there are not a lot of people who are interested enough to focus on it when it's not important, who have the sourcing, who know how to comb through the receipts and follow the money. But I am so grateful that Sludge, if you don't follow Sludge, go to readsludge.com, that they're doing this work. David Moore is one of the co-founders of Sludge, and he has been doing a series on the DNC structure, the membership, the committees, and finally, someone has done an article on Perkins Coie. Which we'll get to. David, thank you for for joining us from your undisclosed location. You can see how excited I am, because when we were on the Unity Reform Commission, we were ringing the alarms on this law firm about why it was so important that people knew they have a monopoly, not just on the DNC, but the Democratic Party, and what that means, other than, everybody uses them, that it's actually way more than that. So David, tell us a little bit about Perkins Coie as a law firm in general, and then we'll get into some of the nuggets.
Sure, sounds great. So I'm very grateful to have a chance to share some of our reporting. So Perkins Coie, it's the top DNC law firm, but here's a key starting fact. It's not just the DNC's law firm. It also represents the DCCC, the DSCC, and lots of other Democratic super PACs and other Democratic groups nationally. So while the DNC's contract with Perkins Coie is one of the DNC's largest, the multi-million-dollar annual contract, it's not the only Democratic money it gets. The Perkins Coie sees about some $21 million last year from different Democratic Party groups, and that includes super PACs. And also, Perkins Coie represented many of the leading presidential campaigns, most of the leading moderate campaigns, most of them except for those of Senator Bernie Sanders and former Vice President Joe Biden. Also, Perkins Coie is based in Seattle. A huge law firm, of course, with hundreds of millions of dollars in annual revenue. And its major corporate clients include 4 of the top 20 lobbying spenders in DC. So right there already, you're getting into a firm that's got a tremendous imprint. And those 4 companies who are Perkins Coie's clients are Amazon, Boeing, Facebook, and Google. So those are 4 of the top 20 right there who spend millions of dollars annually on the Hill. And then also you've got other Seattle, sort of close companies like Microsoft, as well as the defense aerospace company Honeywell, and oil and gas like Texaco and Conoco, those giants. So what our investigation turned up about Perkins Coie that we'll lead into in a moment is the extent to which their oil and gas practice is much, much deeper than had been previously reported. And a look into lobbying records shows that Perkins Coie has been advocating with the Trump administration to weaken greenhouse gas emission regulations around renewable fuel standards.
And this, of course, ties to the lobbyists and money, and really take it out of the party's platform. And of course, there was a lot of pushback on that. But let's put a pause on oil and gas for a second, because I want to understand why law firms are so powerful in these situations. I think I've heard this on chats with really intelligent people saying, oh, well, whatever, everybody uses Perkins Coie, from somebody who's running for Congress. True story. A lot of really honest, even grassroots candidates use Perkins Coie to do their compliance, to set up their FEC filings and make sure that things are running smoothly. And that's big business, especially because the DCCC and the DSCC will push this law firm on them. But these other clients, whether it's oil and gas or tech or defense related industries, I think what's really shocking about that is, and just the cover of law firms. What I mean by that is, they're working with all these industries that have had played a significant role in blocking progress in the Democratic Party for the last 15 to 20 years. And they really are the 2 or 3 industries that have corrupted the party. And I don't say that I say that because that is where the corruption is coming from. The members on the DNC committees that you're covering, that are the lobbyists, that are holding up progress in this party, that are holding up reforms, those are not elected members. Those are appointed members from the industries that this law firm is also representing.
You're right that
corrupting forces are coming from these industries, essentially.
You're right that one of the key factors in Perkins Coie's influence is its revolving door with Democratic administrations. So a look into the Perkins Coie figures who have figured prominently, and who of course were not elected by DNC members or by voters in a state or nationally. It includes former President Obama's former top lawyer Bob Bauer returned to go work at Perkins Coie. It also included a former Goldman Sachs lobbyist, Mark Patterson, who was a former secretary, who was the chief of staff to former Treasury Secretary Tim Geithner during the Obama administration. And there are more examples. There's other like this. Peter Rouse is another former top aide who had been chief of staff to Treasury secretaries and who joined Perkins Coie. And in fact, it goes back even further, where the national firm-wide chair of Perkins Coie's law practice is Mark Elias. He's in some ways often referred to as the Democrats' top lawyer, has played a huge role in legal brouhahas representing Democrats over the past decade, and was the Clinton campaign's top lawyer. People might remember his role in the 2016 primary in a couple of ways, but previous to his role representing the Hillary Clinton campaign, he helped to write a provision for money in politics that was passed by Congress. So our investigation on Sludge gets into how Mark Elias and Perkins Coie contributed to the current rules around super PAC operations and money in politics. And now Perkins Coie represents many of the top Democratic super PACs that are already active have been active in recent elections, and now in this election are beginning to spend in favor of Joe Biden.
What is this? When was this legislation passed? What is the legislation? In 2016, when I first started to look into Perkins Coie, I initially thought, that they were getting transaction fees and they were used as sort of a cover for moving the money from super PACs to the DNC, to the state parties, and then back up, if you recall, and then to Hillary Clinton's campaign, because, just looking at the FEC filings, I was realizing she was, money was coming in and out, and she was able to bring in a lot of money at certain points of her campaign through these entities that she could legally move that money through. And that is a new concept. Jeffrey for himself said it was money laundering. So the thing that they all had in common was that they were all using Perkins Coie. And then when we highlighted that on the commission and previously, Mark Elias got very upset publicly. And I just always thought that there was something there, whether it was through using it as a cover, because law firms don't have to, there's no FEC, there's no trail. And they're probably getting some sort of transaction fee every single time. But I'm very curious to hear, when did this get set up, and have you been able to uncover anything else?
Mm-hmm. Our reporting found that in 2010, Mark Elias and Perkins Coie filed an advisory opinion with the FEC that led to the creation of super PACs. We linked to that primary source document in our article.
Wait. 2010 was when Citizens United was passed, right?
That's correct. That's when it was. Yeah. That's when it was decided. Yeah.
Decided. Yeah. Okay.
And so you're exactly right. And then in 2014, we cite a Politico article that found that Mark Elias was the author of a provision passed by Congress that greatly expanded the amount of money that individuals can give to national party committees, such as the DNC, each year. And folks listening along can search for the headline, "The Man Behind the Political Cash Grab," and find a Kenneth Vogel article from 2014 on Politico.com.
Man. So in terms of a law firm, how much do they have to disclose about this business that they're doing?
Well, one of the questions that we've been asking DNC leaders who are on these committees is if there's any independently verifiable process for DNC members, or even just state parties or grassroots party members, the kind of people who are following along and watching this, to have a sort of oversight over the DNC chair's decisions and processes. And what we keep hearing back is that there are no such accountability mechanisms currently on DNC committees, and that the DNC, in fact, an ethics expert, Craig Holman, who's a government ethics expert with Public Citizen, gave us a quote that described how the DNC works as a private corporation, and even in ways that where even other private corporations that seek to have procedures for conflict of interest, where a potential conflict of interest is identified, discussed, and there's a process, where those procedures, our reporting has found, has been lacking within the DNC. So
non-existent in the DNC.
Yes,
I will editorialize.
No, that's I think that's inaccurate. Based on our reporting and on the lack of response from DNC officials, that's accurate. That no one's been able to demonstrate that the DNC is even following what's in its own bylaws, which calls for a, quote, avoidance of conflict of interest, and for written reports to be circulated by the Budget Committee on the effectiveness of expenditures to DNC members. Multiple DNC members told us that the DNC Budget and Finance Committee is failing to perform its job on that front, and the party was not able to demonstrate that any of these written reports had been submitted. And Perkins Coie's client list it expands to include a small oil refineries coalition for which it's lobbying several other energy companies, and of course Amazon, which was, as we've seen recently, is engaging in violations of the freedom of association, as we saw with the recent workplace action here in New York City in the coronavirus safety situation.
When we were starting to draft the Reform Commission's conflicts clause, it was something that while a lot of people were paying attention to the superdelegates and maybe some of the other reforms, this was a real fight that was happening behind the scenes. I got a tremendous amount of pushback. And actually, other things were being used as excuses for the pushback on the people that were pushing for this conflicts of interest clause was something that was my resolution that I put forward. But that was advice I was given by people unnamed folks who had come to me and said, Perkins Coie is a law firm that nobody has had a conversation about why they're being hired, what they're doing. Nobody knows in the DNC what they're up to, why it is that they have a monopoly. There are tons of law firms out there that do compliance work. This is not compliance work. This is other types of work. And, and law firms, generally speaking, can provide cover for this type of work that may not be able to be done just independently within the DNC, whether it's research, oppo. I mean, research is anything from opposition research on Donald Trump, which came out through Perkins Coie. And if you recall, there was the dossier, Steele dossier that they produced, or opposition research and actions against the left, which I think is a real thing. We were getting targeted on the Unity Reform Commission, and mysteriously, when I complained to one of the vice chairs of the DNC about being targeted with harassment and death threats, it stopped within a minute. And, that kind of operation, while not everything is disclosed in this era, it's much harder to find when it's happening within a law firm. This isn't, this is what Harvey Weinstein did. This is what a lot of people do, is they use their law firms as essentially organizations to do their dirty work.
And for viewers might recognize Mark Elias's name, not just from the Steele dossier, which of course Perkins Coie commissioned and which was later became a national news story, but also because that he was copied on the secret agreement between the Hillary Clinton campaign in August 2015 and the DNC, the secret fundraising
fundraising agreement,
the joint fundraising agreement that funneled money from the DNC to the Clinton campaign, and without the awareness or the oversight of other DNC members and the leading on the committees. So the first paragraph of our story on the top Democratic law firm that helps companies dodge climate regulations has resources on on this crucial question that you've identified, of the crucial issue you've identified of the revolving door between Perkins Coie and Democratic administrations.
Yeah, and I think what's taking the joint fundraising agreement a little bit further, what was mysterious to me is, you had Hillary Clinton's super PACs, which are not allowed to interact or give money to the Clinton campaign, giving money to the DNC. And then the DNC was giving money to the Clinton campaign. And sometimes they take it down to state parties and back up. So it was a real money operation. And Republicans do this too. So listen, this isn't like a Democrats only. We're very good at it on the Democratic Party side because it's distracting and there's nobody shining light on it. I mean, the Democrats won't shine light on the Republicans for doing some of this stuff because they do it too. But that's really where the corruption is, in my opinion. So I commend you on doing this. Have you gotten any sort of response from Perkins Coie, Mark Elias, the DNC, any of them?
Perkins Coie acknowledged receipt of a list of questions, but did not respond to any of the questions regarding its work for the DNC and how it viewed any potential conflicts of interest with its fossil fuel clients or its large corporate clients like Amazon and Facebook. The DNC has not responded to our multiple requests for comment for this DNC reporting series over the past several months. And there's more to come on Sludge as we take a final story to come out on the two committees that we haven't yet profiled, the Resolutions Committee and the Credentials Committee, both of which are interesting because of the role that the Resolutions Committee played in the climate debate last year. But the Credentials Committee going forward has an interesting role where now that it looks like the DNC convention in Milwaukee is in a state of flux, is what I'll say as of this moment. Who knows what's going on? Who can look ahead to what's going to happen in August? The DNC needs to enshrine its superdelegate reforms in its charter and bylaws because it has not done that yet. It's been operating by a process of voice vote, as you know it, because you helped to craft the Unity Reform Commission's announcement. And so there's this key question that others, including Larry Cohn, have raised in in these Times article earlier this week. DNC member Larry Cohn, who I know you worked with on the Unity Reform Commission, that the credentials members will be able to in turn help evaluate who the superdelegates are who are able to advance resolutions for consideration at whatever the convention happens to be. And if the reforms are set to be enshrined, then that's going to be... And
who knows when those credentials committees meet, or the platform committee even, which usually meet a few weeks in advance to the convention.
Typically, yes, that's what our sources in the DNC told me. In fact, it's often just the weekend before. But now I don't know that the schedule has been distributed even to the DNC members. Yeah. Folks can ask their state party to ask their national DNC members what the communications have been, and we can push for greater transparency of communication from the DNC chair's office and ask Tom Perez to follow some basic protocols for how the private corporation works.
Yeah, exactly. A private corporation that has a tremendous effect on democracy. Very normal. Very, very, very normal. David, super interesting reporting. We will love to have you back on to discuss more. Hope you're staying safe, staying at home, staying healthy.
I am. Thank you.
Keep up the great work.
I really appreciate the chance to talk.